days before heading on vacation, I'm assuming. Lots of people on our team are leaving. The Friday is the last day before they head off on vacation. So I hope we can all take a breath and look back. We started this iteration of the project a year ago. We were in Sprint 0. So here we are. Sprint 20. This is the one where the devs showcased scheduling and sending the disbursement schedule, a major milestone. We showed you ministry users viewing, there's a typo there, viewing the student account and searching and viewing for institution accounts. Lynn showed us the results of the student usability testing and how students will view their message center. Roop showed us how a ministry user can view institution account details. And Lisa showed us an initial workflow for reassessment. I also wanted to show you a few things on the Mural board in case you come back and take a peek. We've pasted the links to the Mod Moments videos here. I believe they are continually being refreshed as we make enhancements to the product. And I will just sneak down here to Sprint 21. There we go. Elise.
Great.
Take it away.
Thanks. Yeah. So yet another busy 3-week sprint. We were focused on some more of the background stuff, still building out the background. There's so much background. So MSFAA number, working on that interconnection that we have with the feds. And so the what's called the feedback file, which is essentially we send them the eCert file and they send us a file back saying, here's what we got. So working on that. Also the background to make sure that we actually populate the NOA. So we're going to show you that today with the right values. So that's pretty cool, as well as doing some of that building of that background pipeline with the federal restrictions. So thanks to Josh and Jeremy, and I know Wade, lots of conversations, and we all spent a lot of time in a really big spreadsheet. So lots of that. So what have we been building? You're going to see lots of ministry user stuff today. So super excited about that. So you're going to see how it lines out for a ministry user. We're going to focus on the institution stuff, how a ministry user can search for an institution account, and then how they have different tabs and what they can do and see as they go into that. We've also been doing some work on the student, but we're not going to show quite as much today because what's happening is it's still a bit Swiss cheesy. So it's hard to show you everything when there's a hole in the middle and you can't get from one screen to the other yet and all of that. So, but we're working on that. We're also going to show you some design pieces around the whole notifications. So welcome back, Alana. I know there's been a lot of conversations about notifications. We had initially planned to show you the tuition waiver and the YEEF application, but for folks that maybe aren't aware, there's actually been a pause on the tuition waiver work that's been done. So we have put this to the side for now, and we'll be making some decisions about whether or not we even revise the application because of some of those decisions. So that we got a hold on that for now. But we've also got some design work to show you about pending applications, which is a new concept for a lot of folks. So totally look forward to hearing your feedback about that. As well as that viewing the student application details. So as a ministry user, when you're supporting students, what are you going to see? So we've got some stuff to show you there. Plus also there's still lots of prep work. So folks may have been involved in some different meetings with Lisa to talk about reassessment, over award, and UAT planning. So, so we do have some stuff to show you around that as well. So moving forward, business context. So this is my usual blurb to just get a few reminders in for you. So we are continuing to focus on that ministry user side of things. We've got some back end stuff to work on, but lots of stuff coming out now. And just a reminder that in addition to supporting students and institutions, and of course, moving the applications along, ministry users are going to be managing restrictions, right? Particularly provincial restrictions. So they add or resolve those restrictions. They're also managing those changes. So we're moving away from the Appendix 7 and towards a process where, as much as possible, students and institutions are making their own changes to the application before a COE. But after confirmation of enrollment, we need to get involved. So how are we going to do that? So we've got some ideas on how we're managing those reported changes. And also, of course, we still need to do all of our adjudication work, particularly folks like the case review folks, but essentially when we're managing overrides or what we've often referred to as exceptions, right? Are we approving an exception? Someone tells us a story about their BC residency. Are we accepting that and allowing that to continue to move forward, or are we allowing the system to manage the rules as is? So we're going to show you some of those things today. Robin, did you want to mention, I didn't put in here about the mural that you're working on. Did you want to share with folks what's going on there?
I can. It's still a rough draft, but what we're looking at doing is setting up a mural board that has some of these same links. So the links to the end-to-end scenarios, to some screenshots of the application as it has been built in, or as it appears in test as of a couple of days ago. And then some sticky notes where staff can add some comments, questions, concerns, and it's just intended to be kind of a central place where you can see the feedback that other people have given so that we can really focus on kind of those questions, concerns, and address some of those. And it's also a place where we can, the project team can then give the response and let you know what we've done with that feedback, just to give a bit more transparency and also a record for staff to go back to so that you don't have to, because we find people are engaged and really want to get it right and give us feedback, and then are concerned that maybe what or not knowing what happened with that feedback. So it's really just a place where you can go back to and say, oh yeah, this is what they did with what the feedback that I gave you. So I'll find a time to send out that link to staff.
Sure, we can put it on the top of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So yeah, I mean, we're starting to move into that next phase of the project, right? We asked you for a whole bunch of requirements and information, and now we're starting to move to, okay, so we've built some stuff. What's the feedback? So there'll be lots of formal opportunities. You might be involved in some UAT. Hopefully folks by now, particularly within SABC, have been involved in some preparatory kind of walkthrough sessions. I've referred to them as a bit of the playing in the sandbox kind of a session with Katie. And so we're capturing all of that feedback that you have. Oh, this needs to be different, or what if we did it this way, and are starting to prioritize those kinds of things. So just want to continue to make sure that you feel you have an opportunity and a voice to share your suggestions and thoughts. Caveat, just to be really clear, just because an idea is presented does not mean that it's going to make it into scope for the MVP. Very, very likely we're talking about future sprints and future planning. But obviously we need to know, because if there's something critical that we've missed, and I'm sure there is, just for the record, I'm sure there is, we absolutely want you to point that out. So just want to make sure you feel you have a voice there. So that's coming. We've also initiated our accessibility review, the work that we're doing with citizen services. We are going to have someone coming in January to do a preliminary review and then come again before we go live for the MVP. So we'll be starting to make some improvements based on the recommendations there so that we make sure to meet the standards that are expected. And of course, we'll continue to do that for the next phases as well. So that's exciting. We did mention the YouTube channels, so the links are up at the top there, and just would encourage folks to certainly welcome to share them. I'm watching the number of views, just so you know. I think we're at 160. Woo! For institution, that's good. And come back often because they're not static. They don't stay the same. Obviously, we build something and now we have to go back and re-record. It's not a thankless job there, Katie, is it? So that's that. And then just my usual reminders. So just a reminder that yes, you're going to see some help text that might say, hey, buddy, do this. Obviously, we're not going to go live with that. And so we do have a plan to go through and review all of those things. But if you have some suggestions for wording, share it. You're probably going to see some typos too. So we do have a plan to make sure that we go through all of that. As much as possible, again, just a reminder, you're probably going to see, hey, that looks kind of familiar. So for example, the ministry user view looks into the student application, looks kind of similar to what the student is seeing. That's very intentional so that we're reusing those different views. It also allows you to see the same thing. And I know that's been something that particularly student support has asked for, because it's really hard to help someone when they're saying, but my screen says this and you don't know what they're seeing. So absolutely, that's very intentional. And then just a reminder that we've been talking about the MVP. The MVP is this big thing that's happening in June, but I just want to clarify, this is just the beginning, right? The MVP, we go live in, at this point, don't have a date for it yet, but sometime in June. And then there's phase 2, which we plan on going live sometime in the fall, phase 3. And then, of course, regular ongoing maintenance after that. So also just wanted to let you know, I think at the bottom of the Mural Board, we've added the most updated roadmap. And that roadmap has been updated based on feedback from, from the feature owners, from the directors, from other folks. So you're seeing a much more descriptive, is maybe the better word, for the MVP. And hopefully you're able to see, oh, where's this piece of functionality? And if it's not there, it doesn't mean we're not doing it. Maybe it means we've missed it. So please ask, and we need to get that on there. So just want to share that with you and thank everybody that has been involved in that so far.
I just want to clarify, Elise, has this has been updated, but it hasn't changed drastically from the initial version a year ago. It's just been tweaked.
Yeah, I mean, it has changed a little bit. In some folks are going to say, hey, wait a minute, the first version had 5 phases. This one only has 4. So we have made a couple of adjustments, but the scope for the MVP has not changed dramatically. Has it changed? Absolutely. I just told you about a change today, right? Tuition waiver and YEEF application we've put over here. So we're just trying to get more clarity though. So, but we haven't changed our overall focus for the MVP, and we're still moving in the direction that we had started with. So not fundamental changes, but hopefully just maybe a little bit more detail than what we didn't have last year. 2 final notes before we get into it. One, just to note that we would normally be on schedule to show you a demo on January 5th, because that's 3 weeks from now. But we are going to enjoy a little bit of what we're calling Sprintness, which is a little bit of downtime for a lot of our folks who are taking much deserved time off. And so by the time we come back, there isn't quite enough time time to arrange for a demo. So we have delayed our next demo until January 12th, just so you know, folks will have seen it in their calendar. It's also going to be a little light as far as things go because we only have a couple of developers that are with us over the holidays. Other folks are going to be off. So we're also going to show you some planning and some other activities that we're doing. I'd also like to say that this is Michelle's last demo with us. So yeah, so we are very, very sorry to see her go, but she's going off to a very exciting place. Do you want to tell me?
For those of you who don't know, I'm having a baby next month.
Yeah.
Ta-da! There's also
Doesn't
someone
look
else
like
on our team that's having a baby at the same exact time.
Yeah.
Group is also having a baby. It's not the same baby, guys, just so you know. I've said that joke a few times, but yeah, we are a close team, just not that close. Yeah, so we'll be welcoming a new Scrum Master, hopefully in early January, and I will help with the transition to that new person. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you know, if the project comes crumbling down in the next couple of months, you'll know why.
It's your fault. Right.
Okay. Let's get over to business, to the product review. Thanks, guys, for the comment. We'll start with you, Guru, and the ministry user viewing institution details.
Good morning, team. Yes, hi. Last time we have seen the initial search for students and search for institution for an ministry user. This is the ministry users page, this dashboard. So when a ministry user searches for an institution, for example, he or she can give any name or the name which contains any letters or something like that for me to easily search through all the records. So this screen, I think I have shown you already, but on click of the view button, you might have remembered like we had a page to be developed last time, but now we have a proper screen which defines every profile, program, the locations, the institution users, designations, restrictions, and nodes. So it's not just any these are not hard-coded values. These are like dynamic values from the database, and this profile information of the particular institution has been displayed in the first screen with all this contact info, their mailing addresses. I mean, like these information are just dummy values, but yeah, in a way, like it will be properly populated. We have the program screen where the institution can see the list of programs. So we have done something technically also in this list of programs, what we are seeing it. So this list of programs and the list of locations and users, I mean, this tabular list, right? So this has been implemented with lazy loading function. So lazy loading function in the sense like the APIs, the API will be very less with respect to what the user tries to hit on it. So for example, when a user tries to search for a program here, okay. So for example, we'll just search for this program name, okay. So a particular API request will go, and each and every time only that number of rows, only these two number of rows are just fetched with respect to it. As soon as this has been cleared, you can see like, all this pagination stuffs and everything, like if he or she goes to the next page, again, the API call is being triggered. So in a way, the overhead to the API server has been completely removed, and it's just only what it's really seen by the user has been loaded to the user in the front end. So it's very lightweight right now. So this has been implemented because we thought like a particular institution will have like more than many programs, and you see the study periods, right? These periods have been taken as a group by component for this particular list when it has been fetched. So it's a kind of a little bit, I would say, like an intensive task. So it would be better to go with a lazy loading part. And that's the program. So you can sort it with respect to the date submitted. The default sorting was descending, and you can just change it up. Even this sorting, we have made it like lazy loading. So this is a new implementation for the overall, I would say that the overall our application itself, the lazy loading part of it. And so this is the programs. The same way the institution can see locations. This is the list of locations the institution can actually see through it. You can see the institution's locations, address to the primary contact. So eventually this is undefined right now, but if it has values, this will be populated properly. I'll show you an example which has values. And the users here, the users is like the institution which is supporting those users. The same way as you saw those programs, right? You can search for a particular user. So let's take an example, Diego, okay? For a particular user, and we can just search for the particular, oh, sorry, I just searched for that. Email ID, I guess. We have to just search for the name. Cool. Okay.
Right now, Diogo, it's first name, last name until the next PR goes through.
Oh, okay. So the first name, yeah, sorry. Okay. So you can see that the particular person can be searched through it. And once we clear it, you can see the status of the particular user. And you can also do the sorting. Even here, you can see this, right? As soon as I click, you see this loading of the circle, small loading thing comes, right? That's that lazy loading thing that is happening over here. And this lists you the name of users, the email, the user type, the role. If they are having like multiple roles, it will be listed over here. And what is the locations they are actually has the, I mean, like they have some support to it. It will be shown here, and what is the current status of them, if it is active, if they are active or inactive. Okay, and these designation restrictions, we are actually developing it right now. Also, we have notes column which has been developed. So if you remember, like, I mean, every institution has to just have their own notes, like they have to track on their general notes or restriction notes or any system actions and programs. So we have filtering enabled in these things. So for example, I can just add a note here for restrictions right now, like test restrictions, and I can just add a note here. And you can see like on the all nodes page, you'll see that restrictions, but if you just filter it with respect to the category of nodes, you'll see only the particular category which has been, which needs to be shown. And also, you know, like who has actually returned it from the IDIR's value, you'll know what is the, who has returned this node and stuff like that. So that is another thing. So this is the institution users detail page. So a couple of screen has been developed by Anne, and the node screen has been developed by Deepak, but I was demoing it completely. So just for the information. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The whole team had a part in piecing this together. Right. We thought we better just to have one person tell the whole story. And I know that there's a lot of folks on this call that just can't wait to come in and play with looking around at the institution account. So
yeah, and can I just flag for a second that this is a big deal. So I just want to kind of thanks folks for all the work that's been done on it and contributing to it, but just a really important feature here, because we've got, this is how, so Phil, I can see your team is going to sign in, you're going to query an institution, and this is how you're going to be able to move around and access that information in order to support that institution and maybe even add a note. And so it's this idea that we're also going to show you, not today, but again, when it comes to the student side of things. So the same concept is that ministry user is going to sign in, and instead of searching for an institution, you might search for the student. And you're going to have a series of tabs across the top, similar to what we had for institution. You're not seeing it now because we haven't built it yet, but you will be able to have that series of tabs along the top, and then you'll be able to move into those different areas as you're providing support. So that's the concept and the really basic, simple design from a user interface. So you can see that you just simply click in the different areas that you need to go to. Now, this is really from that support side of things. We're going to show you some other stuff, but just want to let that sink in a little bit, because I know we haven't been able to show you the ministry user stuff before, but this is the very simple, straightforward approach for you to be able to access that information. You won't have to type in the code of the field and move along. You won't even have to F5 or F11. Some folks don't even know what that means. In DOS world, that was how you would maneuver. So we're talking about being able to click, and of course you've got views and hyperlinks and all that kind of stuff as well. So hopefully, definitely another opportunity for Katie to do some more practice sessions and give you a chance to get in there and start to experience what does this mean, and how hopefully will this help, but also more importantly change how you do things now.
Yeah, and we'll also want to conduct some usability testing with ministry
Absolutely.
folks as well. So, you know, not guiding you on how to do things, but just say, you know, hey, go find the, you know, this institution's address and see where you go. See if you can figure it out. Okay. Let's switch over to, I'm just going to ask you, Deepak, we had some bugs show up on your little bit of work last minute. Were you able to resolve them in time for the demo?
The bug is related to data, Michelle, so I can show the data which is right for the purpose of demonstration.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. I'm sure you were like
Sure.
scrambling.
So I'm going to quickly share my screen. So this is about.
Go ahead, Deepak. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, guys, this is about the notice of assessment screen where you can see the values of notice of assessment in it. So now we can see the values have been populating to this. So let's start. You know, this is for an application which is in assessment status. So you're going to click on the view assessment. And here comes your notice of assessment screen. So the first and foremost thing what I want to say here is, like, we are not going to see a huge number of decimal points anymore. It's going to be rounded up to 2 decimals, any amount of dollars that you see. And the values which are coming here are directly from the workflow, which is assessed and persisted in the database. So this is the total grant that a student would see. And also the next piece of information is they would also see that when is their first date of disbursement, and if at all they have a second disbursement, if they're the period of study is more than 17 weeks here, but if not, there is no second disbursement. And mostly what we thought is, like, students just would like to see this piece of information, which is the total grant or loan eligible and the assessment dates. And this is an accordion kind of thing where if they are interested, they would go and see the breakdown of their assessment first. So this is the total assessed costs. I mean, a total assessed need breakdown where we get the financial and provincial assessed cost, and here is the breakdown of each and every assessed cost and the total of it in a federal provincial perspective, and also the contribution here, and we see what is the contribution split down, and then we calculate the total assessment need here, and this is what they see. And next, accordion would open the disbursement breakdown. If they have received a grant of, say, n number of dollars, what is this breakdown actually? What is the disbursement? I mean, what is the grant or loan category they're eligible for? Would all populate with, you know, numerical values. And if they are not eligible for it, it would be just a dash, because it didn't suit it is not, it doesn't suit their application. And we get the total. We get the splitwise here. It's not a total, and we get to see the value here. And here is a total grant, which is eligible for the number of weeks of their the study period or so. So here is a notice of assessment breakdown values. And that's everything from me.
Awesome, thank you. So this all calculates auto-magically based on all the business rules we've put in our rules engine. And we still have more rules to input to that engine. So we'll continue to get more accurate calculations as we move forward. Okay, thanks, Deepak. Schwenker, you have some updates for us on some behind the scenes work that was done?
Sure. If you want to take the screen back there, Michelle. Oops.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a quick little minute talking head thing, just because demoing this is fairly behind the scenes and won't make a lot of sense. But basically, so we've begun implementing the federal restrictions file, which is a file that we receive once a day from our federal partners with a list of all the students with a restriction on them. So we basically are reading that file now and linking that code that we get from that file to a student. And then part of that is when a student is removed as well from that list and they're no longer sending it, we take them off the list. So basically we unlink them in essence for an active restriction of code, numbered letter or something to the student. So long story short, we get a list of a lot of students, link them to a federal restriction code to a student that we have in our system, and if they aren't there, we remove it. So that's one big thing that we implemented this sprint. And the other piece is receiving the full-time feedback file, which is for the full-time disbursement file, which contains a list of error codes or other from the federal partners again, which again is a behind the scenes that once we send a disbursement, if there was an error with it, either with the student, with the awards, with the numbers, with the file itself, we get error codes back, and then we have that referenced as well now. I won't go down too much deeper. For those who are interested, we can arrange some more walkthroughs.
Technical deep dive?
Yeah.
Thanks, Schwenker.
And as a
Go ahead.
good caption, just again, based off of defect numbers and stuff there from that assessment, the data is not necessarily accurate. It's one that we did implement a bit ago, so don't get attached to the numbers.
Absolutely. Okay, over to user experience. We're going to start with you, Lynn, about some of the work around notifications and messaging scenarios.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. I'm going to just grab the screen from you. All right. So notification scenarios. So you might have remembered last sprint, we had worked on notifications, the designs for it, and this is how it kind of looks as a reminder. Since then, for this sprint, we worked on the scenarios that would trigger a notification essentially. And we just put it in an Excel spreadsheet. This is where Alana and I are starting to work on the scenarios, type of messaging they might get, also the email message they get. So student receives an email first, they log in, then they see a notification message. So we're kind of working through the scenario still, and then the content still and what we're messaging. So more to come on that. We've done it for students, we've done it for institutions, but also a tab for like the email message itself. Let me just zoom in for you. Just to give you an example of that. So the email message itself as well. So still more to come on this, I would say, but we've kind of laid down some good foundations with the initial design to be kind of reused for students and institutions as well. So more to come on the scenarios of the content itself. That's getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't want you to have to read through a spreadsheet at product review, but we will show you the actual notification once they get built, the path of the email getting sent, and the student logging in to see that notification at a later date. Yeah. Okay, Lynn, you're continuing on with what it looks like for a ministry user to view some pending applications.
Yes, so ministry user experience here. I'm going to show you a design prototype, which means it's not built yet, it's just a design prototype. So this is the ministry experience. I'm on the home page, and you'll see in the navigation here, we have students, and then all applications. So if you click on all applications, this is where you see all the pending applications. So what is a pending application? A pending application is when you might have remembered a while back we had designed uploaders for the student application. So you're uploading proofs like residency information, or you're putting in a request for an exception, sorry, I should say. And this is what's going to happen is that students will submit with either their proofs of residency, etc., or exceptions. For example, you can choose your income that you'd like to use for the year. And then you can say like, hey, because of COVID-19, my income was drastically reduced. Please use this year's income instead. So that's the kind of exceptions that students are able to kind of put in the system. Once they submit it, it's going to go onto this list here where it gives you a submitted date, the study start date, the type of application, and what the application contains from the student point of view, and also the application number. So what's going to happen is that I click on view. It's going to give me the applicant's name, the application number, and when it was submitted again. But you'll also notice there's some new UI here, which says, hey, for this application, there are 2 exceptions for the ministry staff to review. These are the questions and the section it comes from. You can also view a student application, like Elise had mentioned. Oh, I don't think I linked it. But if you click on that, it would show the student application in a read-only format, exactly how a student would see it on their end. So you're able to view a student's application. So the experience we're thinking about here is, probably on one screen, you would probably have this page up. On another screen, you could have the student application on that screen to reference the question, to reference their proof, to download their, their like residency info if you'd like to kind of read through it and then accept it. Then you would kind of come back to the screen and you can say accept, decline, accept, and then you can see my changes. So that's what we worked on for this sprint. And so everything is coming together in terms of students, ministry staff experience. These things are getting connected. When we're thinking about design, we're thinking about now all 3 users and how they interact with each other, right? So
awesome. Thanks very much, Lynn. Okay, over to Rupa. Now we're going to be a ministry user still, but we're viewing institution designation stuff. Oh, you're on mute, Rup.
Okay. All right, everyone. So my voice I'm losing it today, so I sound like evil Rup is what everyone's been calling me today. Okay, so for today, what I'm going to walk you through is how a ministry user accepts or declines a designation agreement. So here's the process at a high level. I'll move over here. No, okay, I'm just going to stand in the middle of it, apparently. Yeah, so what you're going to be looking at here is once the institution submits this information. Previously, I had designed this. If you remember, if you go back to YouTube about 7, 8, 10 videos ago, we did designation, but things are a little bit different now. So what we've done is, given that this is only going to be affecting about 25 new institutions per year, we've kind of de-scoped that a little bit, meaning focusing more on the ministry side, the more important side for everyone in the room here, minus like Stephanie and a few other people in the room, looking at the institution setup that they're going to do prior to seeing this. You'll see that in a future sprint. But when they do submit this application for designation, there's 2 kind of paths here. So if they're accepted by a ministry user, if they're a BC private, they're going to be sent another notification to sign a designation agreement by that legal signing authority to get to that designated. But if they're international, they don't have to do that yet. So what they're going to do is they get accepted. You guys would follow up in whichever ways that you normally would. Send them an email with some extra information, all that kind of good stuff, and then they're designated at that point. When they are declined, they'll be sent a notification of the declining state, and then they'll be able to resubmit, edit their application, things like that. So how does that work into what we're doing right now? So going back to so similar to how we had that all applications view, this view is going to it's going to show all of the pending designations. So looking at designations as they come through, it's a little bit different in case of a regular, full-time, part-time application. If things look okay, there's not a lot of intervention that needs to happen. But in the case of a designation, we want to ensure that they are who they say they are, ensure that all the information they've submitted is correct. So we're going to be looking at everything that comes through. So looking at this view here, you can see this is all the pending designations that have come through. In the future state, when we get to it, we're also going to show some of the renewals in here as well. But so let's take a look at one of these initial agreements. So I'm going to hit view. And on this screen, you'll notice that we've got at the top here, it says this designation is pending. Please review this designation to make a decision on the submission. So when you're looking at this, it's a snapshot of everything they've entered. Everything except for the agreement documentation, which they haven't submitted yet, right? They're going to be, once they do agree to everything and they sign it, all of those acknowledgements and agreement documentation will show up right in there. So for now, here's the way it's going to work. You're going to hit this designation action section. It's going to open up a modal, and these are the actions that you're going to take on them. And then down here, just in terms of details, we're showing up top here. The agreement period hasn't been populated. It's something that we're thinking ministry staff are going to have the ability to adjust on their own. As we know, we sometimes have agreement periods that are we could potentially have agreement periods that are longer for some institutions versus others. And so giving that ability once we work that into the policy and all that fun stuff. And then an action date hasn't been actioned yet, therefore no date. So let's go ahead and make our determination. Now, you might be wondering, okay, well, what about the programs? How do I look at all the information about the location? How do I know that there's a program that's been approved for each of these locations? The simple answer is you're going to go to their profile. So that profile that was just shown in the last demo, you're going to go to that profile, click on their programs, look through and make sure everything is as it should be. That's how we're going to make that determination. So let's go ahead and open up the modal. Once we've done all that research into that institution, looking at their profile, looking at all the legal signing authorities there, making sure everything is as it should be, you're going to come in and you're going to select either to accept or decline the designation. On this screen, like I mentioned, we're future-proofing a little bit, so allowing you some flexibility in terms of when the designations start and the expiry date will be. And then on a per location basis, we're ensuring that you have the ability to designate or to not designate particular locations. So let's say everything looked fine except for campus number 2 didn't have any approved programs, therefore we can't designate it. You can have the ability to either designate or not designate. Down here, you also have an option to add some notes. This is going to be important looking at, if you remember back from that institution's profile, the notes section. All of these things will eventually stack in that note section. You'll be able to look at the history of an entire institution through that note section. So yeah, once you made that determination, let's say you accepted it, you've added some dates in and some notes, you'll hit submit. Ta-da, it's been, designation has been accepted or declined. Whatever that determination is that you make will be displayed up here along with the note that you've done. And then down here, you can see the status has been changed to accepted. The agreement period has been updated here and the action date has been input too. Now, if we scroll down, another fun, cool thing you'll be able to see is all the documentation related to this designation. We talked about this previously a long time ago when we did do this. It was that, okay, where do all those documents that are for the specific designation live? The ideal would be that they all live within the designation. So when an institution looks at their designation, they'll easily be able to find the documentation for that period's designation. And things like their policy manuals and things like that. It's a great place to go look for it. And then down below, you'll see the designation acknowledgements as they were submitted at the bottom. Now, another question you might say is, okay, well, what about in the short term, if I need to de-designate a particular location, something went wrong, you can just hit that again. And so this would be pre-populated with the dates that you currently had, and you can just adjust the designation on a per location basis if you need it. Hit submit, it'll be updated in the system with updated notes. And that's how you can do it in the short term. There isn't like a crazy process involved for like going into another system to do anything. It's just right here. You just designation actions, change it, submit it. It'll update with what you've done. And that's how it works. That's designation, accepting, viewing, declining, all that fun stuff.
Thanks very much, Roop. A lot of thought went into that one. Okay. I like your little trucks, Lisa. I just thought that you pasted that in there. Lisa's going to show us our UAT test plan and approach coming up starting in January. Here she is. Lisa, I can't hear you if you're talking. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Too bad, because I was just so brilliant there for a moment. So first of all, I'd like everyone to meet the test team. I'll be coordinating the tests, which basically writing the tests, receiving the feedback from the test team, and communicating the results with the dev team, product owner, and also the feature owners. And then as the testers doing a lot of great work will be Nikki Wood, Tatiana, and Danielle Clemenson from the TBTB team. And they're going to be looking at the minimum viable product functionality, documenting any bugs, issues, or concerns that they notice, because especially Nikki and Tatiana have a lot of experience in the system. And they will also retest bugs once the developers have remediated those. The test cases are based on minimum viable product, which means we want to make sure we have wheels for Harry's benefit, steering wheel, and all the functionality we need to take the product, a basic product, to market, basically. So we're basing our user stories and acceptance criteria on those that were defined by the various SABC business areas, and making sure that we have a solid MVP model that we can build on in future phases. We're also going to keep in mind the goals and needs of our real people that will be using these, and we've defined these with our personas and scenarios in previous sprints. Our test workflow will be that we'll write the tests, pass those on to the test team who validate the acceptance criteria, and they're looking for bugs. They're going to log their results and send those back to me. Then I'll be sharing those with Dev Lead, Andrew Schwenker, and Elise Pavetta as the product owner. Developers will fix any bugs that we feel need to be fixed for MVP. And then the test team will have the opportunity to retest those and make sure that those are verified. I say happy dance ensues, but likely we'll just be going back through the process again and have more testing to do. Final approval process, we want to make sure that we really have covered everything. So I'll be documenting what we've tested at a high level and sending them to the appropriate feature owner. The feature owner will be reviewing what we've tested and making sure it's suitable for MVP. And then they were to validate and confirm that testing. And then that's going to go back to the product owner again to do a final review and confirmation. And that's it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa. So over Sprintness, Lisa's going to be documenting those test cases and scenarios and drafting them all up for us to launch in January. And the dev team is preparing for the feedback to come. So we're well aware that there will be some. Okay. I'm going to reshare my screen. And Elise, you're going to talk about Sprintness.
Yeah, just very briefly, Sprintness, as we mentioned, we are going to have a significantly skeleton crew over the holidays as folks are taking their time off. So we are not anticipating a huge bucket of tickets that we'll be working on. But what will we be working on? We'll be doing some of that part-time assessment piece, the behind the scenes, some more award eligibility. So this is us making sure that the award is being calculated correctly. I'm sure that some folks were looking at that NOA going, oh, no, there's no way someone making $351,000 is gonna get $8,450. Those were pretend numbers. And so that's why we need to make sure that we've got all the stuff behind the scenes so that we can start getting real numbers in there. The good news is, though, that we have the spot for the number to go now. We didn't have that before. So so these kinds of checking those award eligibility rules is really important. And we've been doing it for every single funding line, making sure that we've got the rules, making sure the system is calculating correctly, and then we'll be able to turn it on so that it will fill that NOA correctly. From a development perspective, as I mentioned, I think we have 2 folks on, so they're going to be doing some work on the institution piece of functionality, because obviously we want to try to wrap that up sooner, because we know we need to go live for institutions sooner in order to support them in their setup for programs. And of course, ministry users, we've got a few little things that we'll be working on there as well. We've got some cleanup work that the dev folks, again, will be down, a lot of them, for most of the next 3 weeks. So some cleanup activities that's happening, as well as some kind of fun, light, hopefully. Some of the welcome page, you'll notice it just says welcome, or it says welcome, and there'll be something important here. We need to start getting the actual words that are there, and the actual design. Excuse me, sorry. So we'll be working on that. And of course, the same thing, the designing of that ministry user, there's still a few more pieces. We have built out the ability for a ministry user to go in and look at an individual application, but what about all the pending applications? Some of those other kinds of things is what we're looking at, as well as those all programs and study period. And again, you're noticing that we're trying to focus on getting the final bits and bobs sorted for the institution side of things. And that's what we'll be doing. And then a whole bunch of us will be enjoying some time off and eating a lot of chocolate and drinking eggnog.
And watching Home Alone.
That's yes, I will watch it. So we'll watch that, and then coming back feeling refreshed and ready for the final 6-month sprint before we go live.
Awesome.
That's what's happening. So there's been questions, and so here's a good example where, so we have all of your feedback. We go through this, make sure to bring you the feedback, tell you what's happening. But we're also taking this stuff, and sometimes we create a ticket. So for example, the second one where Phil's reminding me about the desire to search by institution code. This came up, I think, either last sprint or the sprint before. So what we've done there is we've created a backlog ticket. So we've created a user story that says, make sure you add the ability to search by institution code. So we got that one, and want to be able to show you a list so that you can see what happened to that feedback. It doesn't just go into the ether. Sometimes we create tickets, sometimes we say thank you for the feedback, but we're not changing anything. Or sometimes we actually have to take it away and do some more work. So that's the second one. So we have a ticket for the institution code. The first one, this is a really good piece of feedback on our current NOA. We don't necessarily want to say disbursement date, because understandably a student would assume then that they're getting money on that day. We know that that's not exactly how the system works. So I think we've come up with historically the term earliest disbursement date. So we might need to make a slight language adjustment. So again, there's a good example where I'm going to recommend we create a backlog user ticket that says we need to make an adjustment, but we're probably going to look at that in the context of what other language or wording changes do we need to make on the NOA, because there's probably some other ones, there might be some other feedback. So we'll bucket those all together and make them all at once. But thank you for that catch. Will this type of build happen for exceptions? So I'm now drawing a blank to remember what this type of build was. I'm sure it was a very good thought. The concept is where this is the idea of exceptions and proof and this ability to manage an exception, I think. Right, Phil? Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was just taking myself on mute. Yeah, the whole idea about, like, if someone, say for instance, an institution is designated and they submit a program and they've indicated something on the program record that doesn't meet the sort of automatic validations, it's sort of outside, and they're either one requesting an exception or we have to review it to decline it if it's outside of the scope of our policy. Having the same ability to kind of look exactly what that is and say, okay, well, we know for this institution, there's these things we have to look at. So we'll go back and kind of check to make sure that everything's on par. And if we're going to grant the exception, we can do it in the same way that we saw today.
Yep.
So that's where my brain went on that one.
Yeah, and that is exactly the concept that we're building. So this idea that as much as possible, so let's say institution, let's say they're adding a program. So they're adding a program, hopefully happy path, they go through, they pass all the validations, program goes to approved. Happy path. But what happens if they add a program and they fail, for lack of a better word, one of the validations? That moves the program to pending status. Now, it doesn't mean that, Phil, you and your team are going to go running out doing something, right? It just means that that program is in pending status. Now, maybe then the institution reaches out and says, I didn't pass this, but I'd like to have an exception, please. And that's what will trigger for you guys to be able to go, okay, I want to go into the all pending programs list, and I want to look up that program, and then I need to see the program and see what it is that it failed, and I need to make a decision. And am I going to allow an exception here with a note or not? And that's exactly the same idea that we're talking about, from the application to programs to designation. So the same concept there, that you'll be able to see it. As much as possible, though, the happy stuff just goes by. It's the stuff that, for lack of a better word, falls off the turnip truck, right? That's what we've been talking about from student applications. So now you need to decide, we need to have a ministry user decide whether or not to put it back on, and have a note about it, because it's possible that we need to make an exception to policy. Yeah. So that's exactly the approach.
Yeah, just a quick sort of other thought as well. The way we kind of do it now, because of administrative fairness, when we review a program and there's something wrong with it, we give them an NOF letter, so notification of findings letter, saying we've reviewed this, this is outside scope, we need more information, or you need to request an exception. Just wondering how that will kind of work with the new system.
And that's a good question. That's one of the things we need to sort out. And so one of the other tasks, which Rebecca is responsible for leading, is all of those new processes that are happening as a result. And how do we document? And I think Terry was asking the same question a little bit more about that back and forth with a student. How do we notify them? Because that doesn't fit in with the process we have now. So those are some conversations we need to have, and we need to figure some of those things out. And how do we do that? So I don't exactly know the answer, but that is exactly the conversation. Now that we know what the system can do, we need to figure out what's our process around that. Okay. So more to come. So will option be added to request more information? So this is this idea that student is, for example, a student or institution is saying, here's the BC residency information, and someone's reviewing that, but they need more information. It's insufficient. So that's again where we need to sort out those processes, where we say, how are they going to do that within the system? From an MVP perspective, we're not anticipating that the ministry user will be able to communicate back and forth with that particular individual for MVP. Future state, yes, but not right away. So how do we do that? Probably through email, but we need to sort those things out and map out that process. So that is absolutely something we need to do. And Rebecca and the service delivery folks will be leading those conversations. So I think that's the same conversation about what Tatiana was asking about, and then what happens when an exception is declined. Yeah, how do we then communicate? Because we can't just decline it. We need to communicate with the student. And how do we need to do that, particularly in light of the fact that we've also talked about notifications today, and showing you that if you decline an exception, the student will be notified that, hey, something's happened, they can come in and take a look. Oh, I like that. That's good, Jacqueline. Very good. Gotta love the turnips. So yeah, so lots more discussion, and I know that this is bringing up a lot of questions, but it's good. We need to sort some of those out. We didn't even have the process before, so we're making some progress there. So yes, also the other question around what about institutions? So we were talking about designation. Roop was showing the designation design, and what's happening here is that institution has set up their account, and maybe they change ownership, or maybe they change an address, and we need to know about that. Do we allow them to edit those fields? What happens when they make a change? Is that something that needs to notify us? Or we need to not allow them to do it, or we need to trigger another process. Those are some more fine validations that we need to work in, and we've identified the need for those as well. So there'll be some more conversations to be had about that. So yes, definitely we need to figure some of those things out. Is there an option to set the location? So this one is, okay, so institutions are designated through the institution account, and if it's appropriate, they may request to have the designation extended across one or more locations if the locations meet the designation criteria. And so I think this question is saying, if we're looking into that, can they be in pending? At this point, the answer is no, because an institution is either designated or not designated. And therefore a location is either designated or not designated. So that's something we'd have to look at a little bit more. I totally get the request, but we might need to think about how do we manage that a little bit more going forward, because at this point we don't have that functionality. No.
Phil, did you have a question?
Yeah,
it was more just because that one was my question, and I was thinking more of like, because we're moving a lot of a review to the back end, so sort of kind of like an audit. And so if we, see a location and we're doing a review on their program, that if depending on what we make, like depending on what our decision is or what the outcome is, we may have to de-designate that institution. Or if we get, say, a notification from PTIB saying it's a closure, we kind of put them into this suspension pending status so that no students can go through, but it allows us to be able to view all applications going through to make sure that we're training out the students who are allowed to still attend that institution and finish their courses, or, set them to pending until we review. And what the outcome of that review is. So that's where my mind went with that question.
Okay, I think it's clear, and there's some other comments that we need to continue to have a conversation about designation. To be perfectly transparent, this has been a bit of a challenge because we originally, remember that designation was kind of out of scope, right? And then because CRM, and it didn't really make sense to have a tiny little pieces dragging over here, we brought it in. And so we're trying to figure out how can we do the MVP here within our timelines and do our other pieces and not make too many changes. So I think at this point we want to keep it as simple as possible and then do some further review, especially since we're talking about a minimal number of new institutions. There absolutely are new institutions, but and of course we also need to look at the renewal process, which we don't plan on doing for MVP. We bought ourselves some time by having 2-year agreements. But we definitely need to do some more work around this designation. So I think, Phil, we can definitely spend some more time going through and making sure that we've mapped it out.
Absolutely.
There's some gotchas. It's not as simple as it seems, that's for sure.
For sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. If we audit, okay, so I think it's the same conversation there. So have we settled on what the student dashboard and partner portal will be called? That's a really good question. Have we settled on what the student dashboard and partner portal?
Is it just the welcome page? That's what we call it on the product team anyways.
It's the whole account that they log into and get all their information on. So
I see what you mean.
What do we call that thing that they're logging into to do their stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, yeah, that's a really good question because we've been calling it the student account. And when you log into the student account, the first page you land on is the welcome page. From the welcome page, you can go to different places. But Yeah, I think it's a good question. What are we calling our system? There's a big question too. Is this SIMS? Is this the SIM? So maybe I think we need to take this one away and make sure that we have some common nomenclature.
Would be helpful to have that just for, because all the communications engagement stuff going out, starting especially January kind of piece.
Yeah, at this point we're calling it SIMS. It's the Student Information Management System.
Rolls off
rolls off the student.
Another acronym.
What is that?
Can we just call it the StudentAid BC account, your StudentAid BC account? Because it's not just students, it's parents, it could be a partner.
We got it done. Yeah. Check mark.
Yeah, I think we keep it simple. So yeah, and Kim, my thought was the same thing too, is, well, what do you guys think? Let's have a little competition. But we don't want, I mean, I think we want to keep it as simple as possible. So, but I think what I'm really hearing is it needs to be simple, and more importantly, it needs to be consistent. Because if someone's and I think this is a change management thing too, right? We're so used to talking about the student dashboard. Student in the new system, that's not how we see things. The student has an account, and inside their account they have different pieces. So perhaps we can start moving away from a dashboard for now. There's a student account. So
what about portal? It's kind of a similar animal. Some people might say institution user account.
Well, and that's exactly it. Yeah, there's an institution account. Okay. So I think we need to take that away a little bit and make sure that we give you some. But yeah, if you have some more suggestions, yeah, we don't plan on using the word portal. I don't think this is a system, and you know, there's different users of the system, but it's still one system. I always like to think of it as Nintendo, right? System. There's different paddles, right? But there's one system. There's only one control thing, right? Or the main board. So, okay, we need to take that away and do some work. We have about 8 minutes left, so let's see how we're doing.
Everyone's getting squirrely.
Oh, it's Christmas. What can you do?
I'm like legit.
What can you do? Okay.
I vote for system, not SFAS. I like that one. Very good.
Otherwise known as, yeah. We need to come up with a symbol.
Formerly known as the artist.
Yeah. So on the screen that shows the student their awards or disbursements. So that would probably be the NOA, I think.
Sorry, Harold, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just saying, I was just thinking that if you're going to refer to it like Nintendo, refer to it as a console.
That's the word.
Because a lot of the a lot of the students will be younger and are used to consoles.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how I've kind of, in fact, at one point I remember making a slide of it, right? That's the console. That's the main thing. There may be wireless or wired little remotes that go off of it, but the main console, that's a good word for it. Okay, we'll come up with something. So on the screen that shows the student their awards, so this is the NOA, right? So this is a notice of assessment, which is no longer a document, it's a screen. So students can go to it. Will it show all SABC grants or only the ones the student will be receiving or assessed? So it will show all of them, and it will show how much they're getting. And if they're not eligible, then it'll have a little line next to it. We've talked about whether or not we might be able to turn that line into something that says NA, for example. And if they're eligible, but they're not getting anything, it'll say 0. So that's on the notice of assessment there. That's one of the things we showed you today. So after the NOA is posted to the student account, do those over award status, oh my, that's a tough one. We haven't really got to over awards as much right now, so I don't think I can answer that. So we're gonna have to move that one forward for another time. Lisa's been working on reassessments and over awards, so so I'm gonna put a pin in that one and say I don't know the answer to that until we get a little further. Apologies. to the designation team. So Phil, heads up. Are exceptions categorized such that for policy, if we decide to look at most common exceptions, we can pull those? The number of exceptions, yeah.
Well, currently right now we kind of track it, but it's not a great tracking system on what the exceptions are. I certainly, I mean, ideally we could build categories of exceptions within the new system, but then again, that's not my my decision to make, or what the you know, what can be built. But basically we can continue to track depending on what comes out of the ministry view for MVP, and maybe morph it from there and see if we can build something into the system.
And I think Vivian's your question is are there common exceptions for program, right? Like,
yeah,
are there
both program and institution eligibility? That's how we're able to. I mean, we used to get a high number of program eligibility requests in policy. Not sure so much anymore, but yeah, it would help us understand if there's an issue with our programs, if we need to be reviewing them, especially because they're changing so much.
Yeah, like we have a
and so forth.
Yeah, so with our policy liaison, we do communicate and we do, you know, pass on information to that policy liaison if there is a common trend of exceptions that are being requested. I think right now we all know what it is. It's mostly online programs. And the other big one is breaks in study, which is going to be, you know, fixed with the new system. So
yeah, it would just be good to electronically track these requests that come in.
Certainly, yeah. And I mean, we could,
as opposed to again, we're doing it on, I think, on an Excel spreadsheet right now. So.
That's exactly what we're doing right now. But yeah, I leave it to the development team to see if there's something that we can build. But yeah, for future sprints or whatever, I don't know. I'm open to the conversation with anybody who wants to.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that in a future state, we'll be able to say, you know, how many designation agreements had exceptions. What were the type of exceptions? What was the outcome of that? And, you know, all those kinds of things. So I think we'll be able to do some advanced planning. Not till phase 3 at the earliest. That's our verification, kind of when we'll start looking at that, because we need to see if we've got it right first, and then we'll start to pull some data from it. So, but it's a good point that we want to be able to identify patterns and trends so that we can improve our process and our policy.
Yep. Harry, you still have your hand up. I just want to make sure that it's you wanted to say more things, or was it a hangover? And
Harry, do you have a hangover?
Yeah, I just have a hangover. Sorry.
Okay.
And Stephanie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the conversation on the program eligibility. I think it's an interesting point, because certainly from like the public school perspective, which is where like probably like 90% of things are,
for sure.
We've never had to put our programs through a designation process. you know, people who've been around long enough know I've been, you know, trying to get the ministry to audit me and some other schools for a decade just for fun. And I did get an audit once, and I threw 45 programs off loans because I needed somebody to tell me throw them off, because the institutions can really control what's going on. And I think a lot of us have, for programs that were approved on exceptions previously, copies in like file folders here and there, but I think you're going to see some stuff come crawling out of the woodwork, because we can't just put a program in for loans anymore, which I think is a great thing. You heard that first, friends. But I think you'll see some stuff creep out kind of all at once, because we've never had to do this. I mean, I usually send things through when I want them denied, you know, kind of thing. But I think you may start to see some stuff come out. I think also being able to track how many programs are only offered online, just as an example, because there's the policy right now, you can have that. So at some point, if that policy were to revert back, how many programs are impacted if that happens, and then how do you manage that? So I think there's some value. I wouldn't expect it for like right now. It would be certainly something later, but for folks in the designation area, don't be surprised if some weird stuff like comes crawling your way in the spring.
Yep. No, it's a good point. It's certainly something that has come up, that the institutions, particularly obviously the publics, are kind of going, wait a minute, I have to answer that question. And either I don't know the answer, or it's possible that my program isn't actually eligible. And of course, our intention is to get everything to eligible, but it doesn't mean we won't have exceptions. We absolutely will have exceptions. We just need to make sure that we bring them forward and are making conscious decisions, and that perhaps those exceptions may be time limited as well. They may not be forever. So definitely there's some work that's going to happen for the institutions and program team. They won't be entering PEDs, but there'll be lots of other work to do in that get ready. Conscious of the time, but I'm just looking at the last question. When an institution is already designated and decides they want to add a new location. So yes, they can do that. The question of, will this trigger a new designation application for that location? So Roop, you're kind of suggesting that it could. And again, that's part of that. We need to sit now and say, okay, if this is our basic functionality, what are some validations? Do we have everything? Are we missing? What are those pieces? So we have created a ticket to do that work. So that'll be something we'll be coming to Phil, you and your team, to talk about and make sure that we've got all the things that we could do and that we've prioritized that, and then decide when we're building those. So that'll be coming. Yeah. It's 11:16. Phil, sorry, can you hold off, or did you want to have a?
Oh,
gotta
it's just
say,
quick.
Gotta say.
No, it's just quick about that location.
Okay.
So you guys know my answer is going to be, it absolutely has to trigger a new designation application, because if that location has never been designated before in Canada, they need a code that we have to request from the MDL, and we have to make sure that their location meets all the criteria in order to be eligible. That's
right.
Just, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Oh, repayment rate. Love it. There's a really good example of something for us to talk about. How do we get that on there? Yeah. Okay. So it's 11:15. Michelle, I'll throw the baton to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. We will take these offline. I have a spreadsheet backlog that these things go into, and talk about them one at a time. Vivian, it looks like we'll have to get back to you on that one as we've run out of time. Have a great holiday, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thanks so much for everything, Michelle. We'll see you tomorrow, but some of these folks won't get a chance, so thank you for all your hard work. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Maybe your baby's going to come tomorrow.
Not ready. Yeah, no. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.